They said I was just a cog in the machine. Doug said it out loud, in front of everyone. But the worst part, he wasn't wrong. He was right in the most short-sighted, catastrophic way possible. I didn't flinch, not when he said it. Not when the others at the table avoided eye contact like I'd just been caught doing something shameful. I stayed completely still, pen in hand, notebook open, staring at the lukewarm coffee in front of me like it held the secret to keeping my dignity intact. It was 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. That's how precisely I remember it, like the exact minute your car skids on black ice. The boardroom was too bright. Those new LED panels humming faintly overhead. The espresso machine in the corner hissed every few minutes. A fancy piece of office theater no one used anymore. My coffee, from the break room down the hall, stale, burnt, and sloshing around in a ceramic mug I'd had since orientation. Doug LeClaire stood at the head of the table, doing his usual circuit, pacing, hands clasped behind his back, smile set like polished stone. He had the kind of confidence only a man who had inherited both his position and his veneers could wear so easily. He was pitching his Q4 realignment strategy to a half-board team of junior execs and department heads who nodded along like dashboard bobbleheads. And then he said it, not like a joke, not like a slip, but like a statement of fact. People like Dominic, honestly, they're just cogs in the machine. Important, sure, but replaceable. Nobody spoke. The room went so still. You could hear the heating vents adjusting. My ears rang, but my face didn't move. I wrote down the words Q4 bottlenecks like I gave a damn. I could still taste the powdered creamer on my tongue. He moved on, just like that, to the next bullet point. Something about margin compression, a graph of red arrows trending down. Meanwhile, I was stuck in the silence he left behind. Only it wasn't silence. It was recognition. I'd known this moment was coming. The funny thing is, I didn't feel insulted. I felt confirmed, validated. Even, I'd suspected for a while now that I was invisible to Doug. That in his eyes, I wasn't a strategist or a decision maker. Just someone who forwarded emails, chased shipments, booked the right flights. A logistics ghost. A ghost who happened to run the entire overseas supply network for our flagship product. But Doug never knew that. Or maybe he knew and chose to forget. That's the problem with men like him. They think machines keep running because they're built well, not because someone oils every bolt, every night, without asking for applause. Across the table, one of the interns shifted awkwardly. Another pretended to check Slack on his phone. The VP of marketing blinked too fast, then looked down at her lap. No one said anything. No one looked at me. I closed my notebook slowly, folded my notes, nodded, as if he'd just complimented my choice of blazer instead of gutting me in front of half the leadership team. But inside something cold clicked into place. Not anger, not shame, something sharper. A decision. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to slam doors or make a scene. That's not how people like me work. People like me leave quietly. But before we leave, we remove the pin from the grenade, and we don't tell anyone we did. As I left that boardroom, I wasn't angry. I was calculating. Nobody noticed I was the one who rerouted a shipment around a typhoon, a customs strike, and a political protest in the same week. They didn't ask how the titanium boron blend from Da Nang always arrived exactly 36 hours before the mixing line fired up. They didn't care that I could translate procurement codes, shipping manifests, and polite Vietnamese refusals without needing Google or a second opinion. They saw spreadsheets. I saw relationships. After that boardroom meeting, I returned to my desk like any other day. The lights above my cubicle flickered as usual. Someone in IT had promised to fix them 6 months ago. They never did. I sat down, opened my laptop, and stared at the little black folder tucked in the corner of my second drawer. It was labeled in silver ink, primary vendor, binding terms. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I clicked through emails, routine chaos. Someone from marketing wanted to know when the next alloy batch would land. Procurement flagged a potential surcharge due to port congestion. I replied. I smiled in my typing. Then I minimized Outlook and opened a private folder on my desktop. It was nothing flashy, just a collection of time zones. Contacts, family birthdays, regional holidays, all connected to one name, Lin Mai. Lin wasn't just our supplier. She was the only person in the entire Eastern Corridor who could manufacture the unstable compound Nordex needed to stay competitive. 8 years ago, no one could even get her lab to answer an email. I did it with a handwritten letter, a case of Okanagan ice wine, and 3 weeks of learning how to say please in her dialect without sounding like a tourist. We built it from there. A bridge, mutual trust. I knew the name of her son, her mother's favorite flower, the time of day she liked her green tea before or after staff briefing. She called me Brother Frey once on a video call and never stopped. I clicked open the video app, let my cursor hover over her name. I didn't call, not yet, but I kept it there, like a hand resting on a lever. Hey, man, Dana's voice broke the quiet. I turned slightly. Dana Burke, senior engineer. Same age bracket as me, but twice as blunt. He held 2 coffees, one in each hand. You didn't look thrilled in that meeting. I shrugged. Define thrilled. He passed me the second coffee and leaned against the edge of my cubicle wall like it was his living room. Word is they're bringing in someone to support logistics continuity. He made air quotes. Kid from Vancouver, MBA, thinks import declarations are optional. I smiled. Just a flicker. Sounds efficient. Sounds like Doug's latest shortcut. Dana took a sip. You gonna be okay? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into the drawer and pulled out the black file folder. I ran my thumb over the silver ink. The paper inside was crisp, embossed, signed in 3 places. Lynn Mai, the CEO before Greg, and myself. Clause 7.3 exclusive intermediary binding. No successor may assume rights without written consent. Still valid, still ironclad. I slipped it back into the drawer and locked it. Dana watched me for a beat longer, then nodded and walked off, muttering something about procurement clowns and backup generators. I sat alone again, fingers tapping the desk softly, mind already moving. They thought I was invisible. They were right, but they forgot what happens when the invisible anchor gets pulled. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and finally picked up the phone. Lynn, I said when she answered on the first ring, it's time we talk. They scheduled my exit interview between a junior analyst's onboarding and a webinar on workplace gratitude. That was the last confirmation I needed. Not that I was underappreciated, I'd known that for years. No, what I realized then was how confident they were. Doug truly believed I was too quiet, too mild, too deeply rooted in routine to ever pose a threat. His mistake wasn't underestimating me. His mistake was never even bothering to measure. The HR rep's name was Megan, fresh out of a policy certificate program and armed with a clipboard and a smile that trembled under pressure. She didn't ask many questions, just checked boxes, offered a perfunctory, "We're sorry to see you go," and handed me a copy of the employee departure checklist like it was a restaurant receipt. I wore the same gray blazer I had on the day I signed the Vietnamese supplier agreement. Not out of sentimentality, I don't do symbolism for show, but because I wanted the poetry, even if only I noticed it. My resignation letter was 2 lines, printed on thick ivory stock. No rants, no accusations, no burns, just an ending. I slid it across the table in a manila folder. Megan blinked, as if expecting something more. A meltdown, a negotiation, maybe even a counteroffer. 2 weeks from today, I said, no need to throw a party. She nodded, probably relieved, and stapled it into the file without reading the content. That's how they always handled exits. Tidy, quiet, contained, just the way Doug liked it. Back at my desk, I moved slowly, deliberately. Every item I packed was a brick in the structure I was building on the other side. 1 ceramic mug from Hanoi, a jade paperweight Lynn sent me after Lunar New Year, a tiny notebook filled with vendor call transcripts, 3 languages, 8 years of negotiation shorthand. Dana stopped by once, watched me in silence for a few moments. Feels weird, he said. Seeing that desk get empty, I didn't reply. Just kept wrapping the mug in a clean microfiber cloth, the kind I used to polish optics shipments. One last layer of protection for something fragile that had made the whole place feel human. In the bottom drawer, under a stack of old org charts and printed customs guides, sat the black folder again. Clause 7.3, still untouched. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight in my hand, before slipping it into my leather tote. I didn't belong here anymore. and neither did that clause. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, staring out the window at the tail end of October fog rolling over Toronto. It blurred the skyline, perfect metaphor for Nordex's vision, always pushing forward without ever really seeing. I opened my laptop, drafted one email. To Lin Mai. Subject, transition proposal. Body, Montreal next week. Let's finalize the terms. Then I opened a private tab and searched for flights. Before logging off, I glanced one more time around the apartment. On my shelf was an old photo, a team shot from 5 years ago. Back when Nordex still had potlucks, still believed in holiday cards and employee of the month. I was in the back row, half cut off, holding a clipboard. No one remembered who took the photo. Fitting. As I packed the last of my things, the Slack notifications pinged like faraway bells. Ethan had posted his "Hello everyone" message in the logistics channel. Perfect. As I left the building, one junior PM asked, "Are you really okay leaving all this behind?" I looked around the office, cheap carpet, flickering lights, the same damn snack bar for 5 years, and said, "It was never mine to begin with." 3 days after I left, they assigned my desk to a guy who thought logistics is logistics and wore his ego tighter than his blazer. His name was Ethan, 20-something, fresh from a procurement boot camp out west. He strolled into my old cubicle like it owed him rent, dropped his laptop bag on the floor, and started whistling. Actually whistling. Like this was a sitcom and he was the star of season 1. "Guess I'm the new supply chain wizard," he said to no one in particular. I didn't see it happen, of course, but Dana forwarded a photo. The angle was grainy, taken from behind a potted plant near the kitchen, but it was enough. The laptop open, my drawer pried, the paperweight gone. That part stung a little. Meanwhile, Slack lit up with quiet confusion. Messages about shipment statuses, flags from port authorities, a cryptic email marked urgent from a junior staffer, wondering why Lynn's team hadn't responded to confirmation requests. Because they wouldn't. Not anymore. Ethan, in his brilliance, had sent the same templated purchase order 3 times in 2 days. All bounced, all ignored. Then he tried WhatsApp, left on read. He even tried calling the main lab line and left a voicemail that began with, "Hey, I'm taking over for Dom." Mistake number 1. Lynn didn't work with replacements. She worked with relationships. And the one we built didn't transfer just because Doug said so. By the end of that week, Greg, the CEO, held a company-wide town hall. I got the video from an old friend in engineering who still shared his sandwich with me every Thursday back in the day. Greg stood stiffly in front of a fake plant, his tie slightly crooked. "Change is natural," he said. "Lips too tight. Tone too smooth. We appreciate Dominic's years of service, but the system is built on process, not individuals." Behind him, someone coughed. That same afternoon, a delay notice came through from the shipping hub. One container flagged pending authorization. The material inside, the compound that kept line 2 from sitting idle. No one escalated. No one followed up. Ethan told the ops team it was probably just a clerical glitch. That's what they always say when the system begins to rot from the inside. In Montreal, the air was crisp. I stood in a quiet boardroom on the top floor of Hallex Tech, the company I'd been watching for months sharp. Hungry, no legacy bloat, just engineering talent and ambition. Across from me sat their COO, a woman named Asha. Sharp eyes, sharper instincts. She didn't waste time with niceties. We reviewed the proposal together, pre-cleared routes, vendor alternatives, fallback logistics for seasonal disruptions. I had mapped it all. Then I slid a red folder across the table. Inside was the keystone, a supplier continuity agreement. Same material, same lab, but now flowing through a different gate. Asha read it silently, her eyes scanning faster as she reached the bold clause halfway down. Exclusive intermediary, Dominic Frey. She looked up. "Is this legal?" I met her gaze. "Absolutely." I said, "It's also inevitable." Back at Nordex, things were beginning to unspool. Dana told me line 2 was paused indefinitely, not publicly but internally. The whispers had started. Why are the buffers shrinking? Why is Project Horizon delayed? Why hasn't Ethan posted in the dashboard since Tuesday? I didn't answer. Instead, I stood outside on a narrow Montreal balcony, phone in hand, watching the city breathe beneath a pale evening sky. I'd spent 10 years greasing the gears, keeping them spinning. Now, for the first time, I let one slow down. Just one. Let's see how long the rest keep turning. They tried to sue me for torching the very contract they handed me a decade ago and forgot existed. The envelope arrived at my condo on a rainy Tuesday, hand-delivered by a courier in a damp gray windbreaker who barely made eye contact. "Need you to sign here," he muttered, handing over a faux leather folder thicker than a boardroom binder. I didn't open it right away. I made tea first, peppermint, no sugar, and watched the steam rise for a moment before I flipped to the first page. Notice of legal complaint. Subject: alleges sabotage and misappropriation of supply chain agreements. Translation: they were panicking. I read through the accusations slowly, as if they'd been written in crayon. Unlawful retention of proprietary documents. Intentional disruption of contractual obligations. My personal favorite. Malicious manipulation of exclusive channels for individual gain. They even spelled my name wrong on page 3. Twice. I called Marcia. She picked up on the second ring, voice as dry as winter air. Finally, she said, "I was wondering when they'd make a bigger mistake." I explained what I'd received. She didn't sound surprised. "Do you want this handled politely?" she asked, "or surgically?" "Surgically," I said. "No anesthesia." We met the next morning in her office downtown. Her walls were bare except for a framed quote behind her desk. "Law is not emotion. It's structure." Marcia moved fast. By the time I finished my second coffee, she had the rebuttal mapped out. Original contract, signed and sealed. Email threads confirming supplier refusal to work with anyone else. Timeline of my resignation. No overlaps, no breach. She added a final exhibit, a simple image of the contract's final page. Clause 7.3. Highlighted in blue, the supplier retains exclusive discretion to terminate or maintain contractual obligation based solely on the status of the named liaison. Herein, Dominic Frey, no successor shall inherit said status without direct written consent from the supplier. Signed by Lynn Mai, by the previous CEO, by me. Her response was short, clinical, and devastating. 3 pages. No drama, just scalpel work. Subject: response to allegation. Body: the complaint holds no legal merit. Should your client proceed, we are prepared to counterclaim for defamation, damages, and bad faith litigation. Closure: we urge you to dismiss. We didn't hear anything for 2 weeks. Then Nordex's legal team quietly withdrew the complaint. No apology, no retraction, just bureaucratic silence. The kind that echoes like a pin dropped in an empty hall. But inside the industry, the whispers grew teeth. At a mid-tier aerospace summit, someone dropped my name over lunch. A procurement director from British Columbia messaged me anonymously. "Heard you walked off with the whole spine. Respect." Meanwhile, Greg's investor update livestream went public. I watched it from the corner of a quiet espresso bar in Mile End. Headphones in, tea cooling beside me. He looked tired, hollow, his usual smirk stretched too thin. "We've experienced some temporary turbulence in the supply chain," he said, reading from prepared notes. "But rest assured, we are deploying cross-functional mitigation strategies. No mention of me, no mention of the contract. Just vague phrases like resilience and agility floating like air freshener over a garbage fire." That morning, I received 3 emails from within Nordex Anonymous. No subject lines, no greetings. 1, 7 days behind. No answers. Ethan's disappeared. 2, supplier has stopped responding. Legal says we can't compel. Clause 7.3. From Greg to the board. We may need to prepare for investor fallout. I closed my laptop, let the last sips of tea go cold, and stepped out into the bright Montreal wind. They thought Clause 7.3 was a footnote. I'd spent 10 years making it the fulcrum. Lynn called me that afternoon. Simple check-in. "We've signed," she said, without small talk. "Your product line, our blend, the market is yours now." The machine didn't explode, it just stopped breathing. You expect collapse to be loud. Sirens, shouts, someone storming down a hallway with a stack of folders in righteous fury. But when systems fail from the inside, there's no drama, just quiet, just questions with no answers. At Nordex, they started asking the wrong ones. Why hasn't Ethan posted since Friday? Why are both alloy lines idle? Who's running point on the Southeast Asia corridor? The whispers on Slack were half panic, half denial. Some said Ethan left without warning. Others claimed HR locked his accounts during an internal investigation. I didn't need the details. I'd seen enough machines choke before. They all sputtered the same way: sudden silence, then long delays, then the smell of something burning beneath a closed vent. One of the major aerospace clients pulled out first. I got the forward from Dana he'd left 2 days earlier. Badge tossed onto the break room table like it meant nothing. The email was brutal in its brevity. Due to ongoing delivery failures and continued supply uncertainty, we are terminating our agreement with Nordex Materials, effective immediately. 2 more clients followed by week's end. One of them rerouted their next order to Helix Tech. I knew because I helped them build the pitch deck. Greg held one last town hall. His voice cracked halfway through. Tie loose, hair too perfect, like he was trying to will control back into his life with hair gel. This is just a hiccup. He said, procurement is a team sport. In the back, someone muttered, just a cog under their breath. Greg flinched. Then came the emergency board meeting. Calendar invite title, executive session, private. 3 hours later, Greg was placed on administrative leave. Translation: the board needed a sacrifice before the shareholders called for blood. No farewell, no statement, just a vacant chair and a peeled-off nameplate. Meanwhile, departments began cannibalizing one another. Legal blamed procurement. Procurement blamed logistics. HR started realigning resources, which is code for pink slips and beige folders passed across conference tables like death notices. Someone from accounting was spotted crying in a stairwell. One engineer printed their resume on the company printer. A project manager locked herself in a glass office and ignored safety alerts for 4 hours straight. I was in Vancouver that week, finalizing Helix Tech's next phase rollout. Their boardroom was bright, clean, and humming with forward motion. We were ahead of schedule, under budget, and 4 days from announcing our first cross-continental fulfillment. At 9:15 p.m. that night, Dana texted me. They're talking about selling or liquidation. I think it's over. I read it twice, then turned my phone face down. I didn't feel triumph or rage. I didn't feel much at all. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was inertia, a body in motion, staying in motion while everything else crumbled behind it. On a rainy Thursday morning, someone forwarded me a press release. Subject line, told you so. Breaking. Nordex Materials files for Chapter 7. Bankruptcy. Cause cited. Irrecoverable supply chain failure. No mention of my name. Of course not. But I was everywhere in that statement. Unexpected material discontinuity, loss of vendor access, cascading impact on contractual obligations. They wrote it like a funeral hymn in corporate legalese. Greg, gone. Ethan, disappeared. Half the department either jumped ship or were pushed overboard. The ones who stayed were scrambling to explain how a single cog had undone the entire engine. A week later, a tech reporter reached out, wanted to know if I'd comment, even off the record. Just to add texture, I closed the message without replying. I didn't need to dance on the wreckage. I'd already built something better. That same week, Helix Tech launched the Vanaflex line. Clean release, 0 delays, engineers smiling in front of gleaming alloys. The industry buzzed with talk of a new supply chain gold standard. I watched it all from a quiet tea house in Da Nang. Lynn sat across from me, pouring jasmine tea with her usual precision. No small talk, just business wrapped in respect. Between us was a folder thick with fresh ink, our signatures side by side. A new beginning. You were right to leave, she said. I nodded, sipping slowly, letting the steam curl upward like the last breath of a dying engine. I wasn't just a cog, I murmured. I was the one who oiled the whole machine. And when I left, I took the oil with me. Sometimes, the hardest part of injustice isn't the moment it happens. It's the silence that follows, the way everyone looks away, the way you're expected to swallow it and move on. I've been there, and maybe, just maybe, you have too. This story isn't just mine. It's one of many quiet professionals, overlooked, dismissed, told they're just a cog while they carry entire systems on their shoulders. And when we finally leave, the cracks we used to seal start swallowing the whole structure. If you've ever felt invisible in the place you gave your all to, this is your reminder. Your worth isn't determined by who notices you. but by the weight you carry and the wisdom to know when to walk away. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated, drop a 1 in the comments and subscribe for more true stories of quiet justice and strategy over noise. And if you've got your own story, share it. Somewhere, someone needs to hear that they're not alone.